In the spring of 1843, the riverbanks of Louisiana swelled with a heat that seemed to come not from the sun but from the ground itself, rising through the red soil like breath from something buried alive. The Blanchette plantation stood on a ridge above the Mississippi, its white columns gleaming by day and ghostly by night. To the travelers who passed along the river, it looked serene, prosperous, untouched by the fever that haunted so many estates. But to the people who lived behind its kitchens and stables, the air carried another smell, the metallic tang of blood mixed with carbolic acid and something sweeter, something wrong. Miriam had been bought 6 months earlier from a New Orleans auction. She was 28, taller than most women, her hands strong from years of fieldwork, and her mind sharpened by silence. The overseer called her obedient because she did not speak when struck, but obedience was not what kept her quiet. It was listening. She listened to footsteps, to the turning of keys in the doctor's quarters, to the muffled cries that sometimes came from the lower house at night when the lanterns burned too long. They said Master Blanche it was a man of science. He had studied in Paris, brought back books with gilded titles no one could read, and glass tubes that caught the lamplight like frozen rain. After his wife died from yellow fever, he stopped speaking to his neighbors and stopped selling cotton. He turned his plantation into a laboratory. The cotton fields still grew, but their yield no longer went to market. It went to buy equipment, chemicals, and human bodies. The first time Miriam saw the doctor, he was bent over a table in the old sugar house, a place once used to boil syrup, now converted into a workshop. A young boy lay on the table, alive but unmoving, while Blanchette's assistant poured a clear fluid from a vial into the boy's veins. Blanchette spoke softly in French, his hands steady, his eyes fever, bright. When the boy convulsed and the flask shattered, he only sighed, as if disappointed in arithmetic rather than death. Miriam had been ordered to scrub the floor afterward. The blood came up easily, but the smell never left the boards. Weeks passed, each night filled with strange errands. Miriam was told to fetch herbs from the garden at odd hours, to carry water that smelled of spirits, to deliver sealed boxes to the basement under the main house. She learned not to ask questions, but questions asked themselves. Why were the lights always burning under the house? Why did Blanchette need salt and vinegar and fresh blood in the same bowl? Why did his assistant, a pale boy named Leclerc, tremble whenever he was told to unlock the cellar door? It was Esther, the cook, who told Miriam the truth in a whisper. "He's looking for the soul," she said. "He thinks it's a thing you can catch before it leaves the body. Says he's seen it. Blue light rising from the dying. He wants to hold it, trap it like perfume in a bottle." Miriam pretended not to believe her, but that night she dreamed of glass jars filled with light that breathed like lungs. In late July, Blanchette summoned Miriam to the house itself. She was given clean clothes and told to wash her hands. Inside, the room smelled of camphor and iron. The doctor greeted her with a smile too gentle to trust. "You are strong," he said, studying her arms as though measuring bone. "You have the kind of blood I need, rich, healthy. Do you want to serve your master well?" Miriam nodded because there was no safe answer but yes. He led her down a staircase behind the study, where the air grew cooler and the light changed color. The walls were lined with shelves holding jars of preserved organs floating in yellow liquid. Tables stood in neat rows, covered in white cloths. Some bulged slightly in the middle, as if hiding bodies beneath. At the far end of the room, a copper machine whirred faintly, its pipes dripping condensation. "This is the chamber of restoration," Blanchette said, "a place where death is only a misunderstanding." That night she became part of his experiment. Leclerc fastened leather straps around her wrists and ankles, while Blanchette explained his theory to no one in particular. He spoke of electrical fluids, of vital essence, of how lightning might be distilled and combined with human blood to reawaken the dead. His wife's portrait hung on the wall, eyes watching everything. When he inserted the needle into Miriam's arm, she thought of her mother's hands shelling corn under the sun, and she did not cry out. The current struck like a thunderclap inside her veins. Her body arched, her vision burst into white fire. She felt herself split, part of her rising upward, part of her sinking down. For a moment she saw herself from above, saw Blanchett leaning close, saw the copper machine glow with blue light. Then darkness folded in. She woke in the servants' quarters 3 days later, her arm bandaged, her body weak but alive. Esther sat beside her, crossing herself. He'd done it again. She murmured, "3 before you died, you came back." Miriam didn't feel alive. Her heart beat too slowly, and sometimes when she blinked, she saw flickers of blue under her skin, like lightning trapped beneath glass. After that night, Blanchett treated her differently. He called her the proof. She was made to sleep in the kitchen, close to the cellar door. At random hours he would appear, take samples of her blood, note her temperature, question her dreams. Sometimes he asked if she remembered dying. When she said no, he frowned and made more notes. The others avoided her. They said her eyes glowed in the dark. Children cried when she came near. Animals shied away. She wanted to deny it, but one night she caught her reflection in a pan of water, and saw faint light pulsing behind her pupils like a heartbeat. In September, new slaves arrived, 6 men, 2 women, all purchased from a steamboat that had docked under false papers. Miriam helped feed them, saw their fear, and recognized the same hopeless obedience she once wore. One of the men whispered that he had been sold cheap because of a mark on his chest, a burn shaped like a circle. Blanchett examined it with fascination. A natural conductor, he said, perfect. The pattern repeated, isolation, medical inspection, disappearance. Within weeks, the new arrivals were gone, their names erased from the work logs, but Miriam had begun to remember flashes from her own missing hours, the taste of copper, the smell of burned hair, Blanchett's voice murmuring numbers. And always the same word, transfer. One stormy night, when thunder rattled the shutters, she followed Leclerc after he fetched water from the well. He descended into the cellar, unaware she was behind him. Through the half-open door, she saw the doctor bending over a metal table where something twitched under a sheet. The shape was too small to be human. When Blanchett lifted the cloth, she saw the body of a newborn calf with wires sewn into its veins, its chest rising and falling though its throat was cut. "It breathes," a Blanchett whispered. "The essence endures." A Leclerc looked sick. "Monsieur, the others. People will talk." Blanchett turned on him with sudden fury. "There are no others. There is only history being written in this room." That night Miriam decided she would not be part of his history. She waited until the next Sabbath when the doctor rode into town. The cellar key hung from a hook in his study. Her hands shook as she took it. She found the basement quiet, the lamps still burning. The machines ticked softly, alive on their own. She opened the nearest cloth-covered table. Underneath lay one of the missing men, eyes stitched shut, skin waxen. But when she touched his hand, it moved. A low moan escaped his mouth, mechanical and human at once. She slammed the cover back down, choking on bile. Further in, she found a row of jars filled not with organs, but with something luminous, blue vapor twisting like smoke. Each jar was labeled with a name. One read Celeste Blanchett, his wife, her soul in a bottle. Miriam smashed the jars one by one. The light spilled into the air, swirling like freed spirits. The room grew cold, the lamps dimmed. She heard whispers that might have been voices or wind. Then she set fire to the shelves, the books, the notes. Flames crawled up the walls like hands. Leclerc burst in, shouting, but she struck him with a lantern and ran. The house above was already filling with smoke. Esther met her at the kitchen door with a sack of food, and the old pistol Blanchett had kept for hunting. "Go," she said. "The river's low tonight. You can cross." Miriam ran until her lungs tore. Behind her, the Blanchett plantation burned, the sky glowing red against the river's black surface. She reached the opposite bank by dawn, shivering in the fog. When she looked back, only the chimneys stood, pointing like gravestones. Months later, stories spread along the river of lights hovering over the ruins, of cries heard beneath the ground when the wind blew from the east. Some said the doctor escaped and continued his work elsewhere. Others swore he died in the fire. No one ever saw Miriam again, but fishermen claimed that sometimes at dusk a woman walked the levee barefoot, her eyes glimmering faint blue, watching the water as if waiting for it to speak.